Welcome, everyone, to the Friday, July 30th edition of the Signals from Mars live stream brought to you by the Mars Attacks podcast and by VMRIT.com. We are joined once again by Mr. Brad Dahl, sporting his Mars Attacks t-shirt.
Yeah, it's a beauty. Hey, you know how you guys can get one of these?
How's that?
Join on Patreon, man. Join Victor on Patreon and what, $10? Is that where we're getting the shirt at? $10?
Yeah.
Hey, it's money well spent. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm wearing this, okay? So I had to go into work today for just a little while that turned into longer than that. And I get there and it's like, oh, guess what? Everybody has to wear a mask now. Screw that. So yeah, that's the way the world's going over here. We're now remasking. Yeah, it's awesome. So hope everybody's doing well.
Shouldn't that have a B instead of an LA on that mask?
BA? BA?
No, just a B.
Just a B. Oh yeah. Sure. Why not? For Brad.
You don't understand. You're not getting my okay.
No, I don't. Come on, clue me in.
Where's the team originally from?
Oh, from duh. Yeah, from yeah. From there, New York, and
New York.
Yeah, New York, where Kiss came from, right? Brooklyn.
There you go.
Is that where Kiss came from?
Not, they're all from all over. Ace is from Brooklyn.
Okay, we'll give Ace credit.
Is he from Brooklyn or the Bronx? I forget.
He's
Either
from
him
Bronx,
or Peter.
because he's got that Bronx. What's that song on his last one? Bronx. Man,
Bronx Boy. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. Written by my friend Ron Mancuso.
Okay.
Who I did one of the very first interviews I ever did and posted on YouTube was with Ron, and I did that in his studio in Las Vegas, which was way cool. Super cool dude. You guys should check that out. He's got a great history. So there's my plug. So go to Yarg Metal on YouTube and check that out. It's way long, but it's way cool. So there. Sorry about that, Victor.
No, that's fine. Hey, that's what we're here for, to turn people on to what you're doing. And if we can at least get one person to go over to Yarg Metal tonight, then I think we've accomplished our task.
That would be awesome, and I'd love some feedback from anybody who listens in. I mean, I don't, ghost listeners, okay, but it's always nice to have somebody say, I didn't like this, or I like this, or whatever, because how else, I mean, I'm not doing this to please everybody, obviously, because what'd be the point of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd be like a terrestrial radio if we were trying to please everybody.
Yep, playing the same 20 songs over and over again. I remember when I moved over here, we had a and this is funny because someone asked me about this a little earlier this week with all the people passing away. One of the first CDs that I bought when I came over here was the third Slipknot CD, which at the time we had like a kind of like an underground station that would play a very eclectic mix, and it would be everything except for what you would hear on terrestrial radio. So you would hear like German techno music, and you'd hear country music, and you'd hear folklore, and then you'd hear Slipknot all of a sudden. It's like, whoa, where'd this come from? That station, unfortunately, became a rock station called Rock FM. I was like, wow, cool. So we're finally going to get a rock station that's going to be playing 24 hours a day. We're going to be getting some cool music. And they kick it off with Smoke on the Water, followed by Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones, followed by Enter Sandman by Metallica, followed by Foxy Lady by, Jimi Hendrix, followed by Comfortably Numb, Stairway to Heaven. It's like, oh, okay. So all the songs that turned me away from terrestrial radio in the States are now going to be on 24 hours a day here. Great.
Yeah, and of course that's our mantra is you're going to hear stuff here and there, but most of it is new music or bands maybe you're not familiar with, maybe older stuff that things you missed along the
Right.
way. So we're trying to fill that gap of educating people to other things they might not know about in the music world that we think are cool. So therefore, they are cool. So if they're not, let us know. Of course, there's Meshuggah, um, which I still can't. I don't know. What's your take on Meshuggah?
I've seen them live actually.
Well,
Um,
and people go
I
nuts, right?
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, yes, but I mean, there's a song of theirs called "Bleed," which I think is really, really cool. But the rest of their music kind of just bleeds into that, for lack of pardon the pun or whatever the cliche is. But they're super talented, but to me, a lot of their stuff just sounds very similar.
Yeah,
Um,
it's I mean, musically, I appreciate what they're doing. I mean, it's incredibly difficult, all the stuff that's going on in their music. But as far as listening to and enjoying, I haven't reached that point yet. And of course, the vocals
right.
really don't help for me either because I that's just not my thing. Which, by
Mhm.
the way, hello, Jose, good to see you here, and Rob, good to see you here as well. And thank you for the comment about Yarg. So appreciate
Yep.
that. Yeah. So, but anyway, so let me tell you the story of how we got them on Yarg Metal.
Okay. Go ahead.
CEO Dave was flying to Stockholm, being the big CEO that he is,
Okay.
and noticed these guys that looked like they were in a band, and it was Meshuggah, and they were coming back, I think, from Australia. He could probably chime in if he's supposedly watching. He's probably watching the one that was from last week, though, knowing him. Bless his heart. I love my brother, man. He's the best. But anyway, so he sees these guys, and him, unlike me, I would be kind of shy about going up and talking to people. I get, I like giving people their space. But he
Right.
was up in him. He goes, "Who are you guys?" And well, we're Sugar, and like, oh, cool. Well, hey, I got a radio station. Need you guys to do a shout out. So they did. They did a, the singer did a shout out for us, and um, so yeah, so I'm like, holy crap, I don't know their music, like really know it. And so I'm not going to just throw a dart at the wall and pick some songs. So I asked the what I consider the foremost Meshuggah expert, and that's Brian Beller, bass player to the Stars, who plays bass in Death Clock. So I mean,
Okay.
he's serious metal cred, and
Right.
plus he's just unbelievable bass player. So he sent me a list of songs. He's like, "Oh, this is," and of course he's such a cool dude. He went deep dive on each one, explaining why it was cool. And of
Mhm.
course, as I listened to it, I'm like, you're making me feel like a 5-year-old here. Like this music is whoosh, going way over my head. I mean, you're breaking this down and says, "Well, dig this section where they're doing 13, 8,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and then the drummer's doing this and yeah." So there you go. Yeah, that's my take on Meshuggah. Their acquired taste. I'm sure there's people that really like them, and we still do play them once in a while. And I'm going to check out that Bleed song, and I'm going to dedicate that to you, Victor, when I play it.
See, one of the pluses to being in the high school band was learning about 13/8 time and 16/11 and stuff like that before but before all these bands started making it popular. Jimmy Page did a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
But it
yeah, you just didn't notice it.
you just didn't notice it as much. Where when you got to like Soundgarden, I think Soundgarden is really the band that kind of like really started to push the odd time signatures, and then you started to see it a lot like in Mastodon and Meshuggah and Tool and a lot of these bands with a lot of prog like influences, and also a lot of Zeppelin like influences, because a lot of people, for as much as people beg for Mastodon to go back to the heaviness that they initially had, I mean, they've always said it. We grew up on Zeppelin and ACDC and Thin Lizzy and stuff like that. So their influences are really in 70s hard rock, where
Yeah,
bands were doing a lot of this stuff just kind of by accident. It wasn't purposely done. It just kind of sounded cool, and they went with it, as opposed to just being a calculated measure where you had to have, oh well, let's throw in this part that's 13/8 and whatever, and it's just because it's cool because everyone else is doing it. No, Jimmy Page was doing open chord tuning and those weird time signatures, because he was finding them in other forms of music, in Arabic music, and in old folk music and stuff like that. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, Mastodon is a band that I really want to like, but
Okay.
and I listen to them and I'm just like, it's just not. It's not like it's not hitting me. You know what I mean? As far as it's not like, oh man, I want to hear that song again, or it's like,
Right.
man, I'm really just grooving to this. And I actually did see them live once. They were warming up for Death Clock, and luckily I was a guest of Death Clock at that show, and um I was like, these guys, they're such cool guys too. Really,
Right.
really nice guys. Super, super nice guys. They're all really good players. But I mean, they're just standing there and they're just blah, blah, blah. And they played one song for the encore that was kind of a really heavy, almost Sabbathy kind of song. I don't know what
Right.
it was, but it was just like I was like, that I can get behind. Um,
I
that
have to
was
do similar to what I did for Jeremy, where I sent him a Danko Jones playlist. I have to send you
hmm,
a Mastodon playlist
you
with
do, you
kind of
do.
stuff that I know that you'll probably kind of dig. Jose's brother got to see them open for Metallica, and I remember he was telling me, "Yeah, I'm going to go see Metallica play," and I think it was in Puerto Rico. And he's like, "This band Mastodon's opening up for them. Do you know them?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he came back from the show and he was like, "Oh my god, they blew me away. Their drummer was just so good and he sang a lot of the stuff." And I said, "Yeah, they all sing except
Yeah.
for the one guitarist, except for Bill Kelleher, who just kind of grunts every now and then. But for the most part, it's the three of them that are singing." The bass player, Troy Sanders,
Yeah.
he's last year, I said he was like the MVP of last year because he did the Killer Be Killed project, which is him and Greg Puciato he used to be in Dillinger Escape Plan, who's like he's from close to where I grew up in New Jersey. Max Cavalera from Sepultura is in that band, and the drummer, damn it, I forget the drummer's name right now, but he was also in another like pretty known band. And the first album was kind of okay. It was a super group, but the last album they put out was really like a group effort. So it really, there's a lot of really strong material on that. And that was, I think, up on Patreon, may have been the first like album of the week unboxing that I did with their
Mm.
vinyl. But it's still an album that I go back to. A lot of times you listen to stuff when it comes out and yeah, it's really cool, but like a year later you kind of forget about it, because you kind of go back to the stuff that you've always listened to, and you pepper in some stuff that you think that's on par. And this stuff, I was listening to a playlist from last year and I was like, oh wow, this album, I'm glad I'm listening to this playlist because I really enjoyed, like, really half of that album was really outstanding. So,
Hmm.
um,
Flip me some songs, man. I'm like I said, I've tried desperately to really like these guys because I like what they're all about as far as human beings, and of course they're younger guys playing rock and metal, and yeah. But so far it's just I haven't heard a lot that really moved me. So
okay.
I'm down to try. I'm really up for that. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. That could fall along the lines of some of the stuff that we were talking about off air. Bands that are really big that you can't seem to get into. It was funny because you brought that up, and there are a few different things. Either bands that are big that I instantly think of Metallica when I think of that, because for the longest time I couldn't get into them just because of nonsense of being kids and growing up. And um we talked about this last week, how there was this whole, oh well, if you like Anthrax and Megadeth, you can't like Metallica and Slayer, just like nonsense like that. And then I remember when the Black Album came out and all of those like supposed diehards started breaking their ankles jumping off of the bandwagon. um it changed, and I was like, oh, okay. So since you assholes no longer like this, I'm actually going to check it out, and I actually enjoyed it, and I went back, and there are albums that obviously I enjoy more than others. There are other bands that are huge now that maybe I really liked before that for me, I lost interest in them. Volbeat is a band that's super big right now. And I really like at least the first two albums that I checked out by them. I think they may have albums that came out before that. But they're a band that I lost interest in only because they, to me, they kind of went the route that, kind of a commercial route. They started putting out stuff that didn't kind of appeal to me. Yeah, so I got into them their third album in. Their third and fourth album are my two favorite albums. And then after that, I lost all interest in them because to me, the stuff that I started listening to them early on was like a cross between, a Black Album Metallica and like Misfits and maybe even like what's the band that Mike Ness is in, Social Distortion type stuff.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a cross between all three, and I was like, all right, I can dig this. But then after that, they started getting like a little too polished and a little bit too commercial for me. The one band that really sticks out that so many people like and that I just can't get into. And again, I like the first few songs that I heard from them, but it was funny. I will always mention this. Back in It was September of 2009, and I remember this because I was on my honeymoon. I had pre-ordered 3 albums, and we were in LA, and the 3 albums were Ace Frehley's Anomaly. It was an album by Shadowfall, which has the badge on it. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. I know that they covered Bark at the Moon on that. And then the third album that I pre-ordered was the second album by Five Finger Death Punch. And I remember listening to that when we were on our honeymoon. We were driving around LA, and there were like 4 songs before the end of the album. And my wife is usually pretty good about, just hanging in there with stuff, unless it's just really like there's certain hair metal stuff that she can't listen to. Like she's just not into it. But we were listening to that Five Finger Death Punch album, and she goes, please turn this off. Please put something else on. She goes, not only is this boring me, but it is bad. And I said to her, look, there's 3 songs until the end. I just want to get through the album once. After that, I promise we can put whatever else you want on, but just let me just see if there's anything worth listening to out of the, from these last 3 songs. Unfortunately, there wasn't. So,
but you made it through the whole album.
I made it through the album. I've made it through that whole album twice, and I've never been interested in anything else that they've ever released.
You're a trooper. I have a lot of respect for that. Not just like, trashing it with one song or even one listen. You even went back and listened to it a second time.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of respect for that. So, it's funny you mentioned Metallica, and of course I've told my story about what the first time I saw Metallica before they were signed, and I don't know if that kind of tainted me a little bit because it's just like, and then they kind of, as they started coming out, I kind of felt like they were rammed down my throat almost, at least here, because anytime there were very little, there wasn't like a metal radio station back then, but there were like on Sunday night, there'd be, like the metal hour or whatever. And of course they'd play Metallica. And then right after that, when they started kind of breaking, every radio station had mandatory Metallica. 10 o'clock every night, they play an hour of Metallica. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know. They don't need my help. I saw them warm up for Ozzy. It was I think it was might have been the first metal show I took my wife to, Shelley. Metal was not her thing when we got married. And it's just, for whatever reason, maybe because nobody likes me, I didn't have anybody to go with me. And so she's like, I'll go with you. And Metallica was the warm-up band, and I don't know what album they were touring back then, but it was before. It might have been Master of Puppets.
It was Master of Puppets. It
Yeah,
was
because I remember
Bark at the Moon, Master of Puppets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she was just like, "Yeah, this ain't doing it for me." And then what happened there? I think Ozzy was sick, and so
Okay.
it was Jack. What's his name? Wild. Zach Wild. Zach Wild kind of covered for Ozzy quite a bit and did like this 20-minute guitar solo, which was I'm gonna
Well, that would have
sarcastically
been
say
Jake at
awesome.
that time.
Was that?
That would have
No,
been
it was
Jake.
not Jake. No, it wasn't Jake. I swear to you, it wasn't Jake. I would have loved that actually. Yeah, his guitar solos were pretty
But I don't
damn
think
cool.
Metallica ever opened up for Ozzy again after that.
Okay. I could have sworn it was Zach, but I could, I'm old. Okay, things. I mean, we're talking what 30 plus years ago,
Yeah,
35
'83.
years ago or something.
Yeah.
But I know Metallica was there. Okay, and I'm pretty sure it was Ozzy. But the next time we saw him was on the Monsters of Rock
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
We drove to Spokane, or as Klaus liked to say, Spokane, Spokane. Which, yeah, which they were the second band to play. Yeah, it was Kingdom Come that came on first, which
Right.
I actually I thought they were enjoyable. They did like a half-hour set, which is perfect. And then Metallica came on, and we were at the time it was hotter than hell. It was like the hottest day ever in Spokane. It was 100 something degrees. We'd got milk jugs and filled them up with water and froze them, thinking, "Guy, we'll have water." Okay, they wouldn't let us bring them in, so they
Right.
got no water. So we climbed up in the bleachers and underneath the where the broadcasters sit
Right.
and the shade. So we sat there in the shade and kind of took in the first few bands. And I gotta say, we actually enjoyed Metallica there in that kind of setting. It was pretty good. We were both singing along with Seek and Destroy at the end of their set. So I
Yeah,
mean,
that was right before Injustice for All,
yeah,
that tour. Yeah.
yeah, they had their charm. I think that's the last time I've seen them live because then they became headliners after that. So
Right. Yeah, yeah, right on that tour they became headliners. I've seen them twice. I saw them Lollapalooza '96, and I got to see them also here in Spain headlining a Sonosphere where they played. It was the 25th anniversary of the Black Album. So since it's going to be 30 now, that was 5 years ago. Or maybe it was the 20th anniversary. Yeah. I think it was the 20th anniversary because um I'm trying to think that it was, yeah, probably 2011 that I saw them. And that was, they played the Black Album in its entirety when I saw them.
wow. Yeah, I have to give them major credit though, because look what they've done. I
Right.
mean, they came from well, of course, everybody starts from nothing, but they're arguably the biggest rock band in the
Right.
world.
Right.
And also they did it kind of on their terms. I mean, once they had the Black Album, they kind of did whatever the hell they wanted and did a
Yeah.
lot of albums that their fans didn't like, and but yet everybody still went.
Right.
It
Well,
didn't.
that's
Yeah, they kept on the upward trajectory where they're still playing stadiums and
yeah.
big arenas and headlining, and they never went through a period where people maybe stopped buying the album, but they didn't stop going to see them.
Right. And to their credit too, the diehards have still, even if they haven't liked their stuff, they've still purchased it. I mean, after I know a lot of people point towards certain albums, but to me, there's two albums that I can't listen to by them. One of them is that first S&M album, the with the orchestra,
Yeah.
because it just sounds like you're listening to two different things at the same time. The one thing is having the orchestra complement the music, and another thing is just having the orchestra play something so radically different that it's like, okay, it's as if I'm listening to Metallica in one ear and I'm listening to a completely different band in the other ear. That to me was just, I couldn't listen to it.
Yeah.
And the other one is Lulu. Lulu is the only other album that I just can't stomach. And I've said this, similar to what I said about Five Finger Death Punch. I've tried to listen to that album, more than once. I've gotten through it all the way through it, I think twice. and I've tried to listen to it on 4 occasions and be like, okay, well, is this the time it's going to click? But every time I get to Lou Reed saying spermless like a girl for 7 minutes, it's like, okay, I'm done. Done.
Then it's like again if it's
It's not going to get any better. So, and the funny thing is, a lot of the music is really cool, but
yeah.
you start to hear Lou Reed just like yammering about nonsense. It's like, this is no wonder they use this shit, to force people out of houses when they want to arrest them and whatnot. It isn't the good stuff. It's always the shit stuff that no one wants to listen to. That please come out with your hands up. If not, we're gonna play Lulu for the next 16 hours until you give up. And it's like 40 minutes in. All right, I'm done. I give up.
Oh, guy. Yeah, I got to tell you a quick story along those lines before we go on this with this thread.
Okay.
The band I was in the 80s, the one that was trying to make it, and we were desperately trying to get our live game together for a showcase. And we're just you know what it's like. You play in a room with a bunch of guys, okay?
Right.
And everything, the sound is all right there and everything's great. Then you get on a big stage and the sound is gone.
Yeah.
And you're kind of at the mercy of whatever the monitor guy's giving you. And it's really tough to get up there and put on a show when you can't hear what you want to hear, or it doesn't sound big. It's just like, so anyway, we got this brilliant idea. We rented out this huge warehouse on the west side of Salt Lake City. Met this guy, and he's like, yeah, he used it for store. He rented people storing stuff like RVs and boats and things like that. So it was huge. But he says, yeah, you guys can rent it from me and use it for rehearsal. And so we set up this huge, big ass stage and got used to having lots of room, PA, way out and everything. And then every Friday and Saturday night, we'd open up the doors and let people in, just like for free. Like anybody wants to come down and party with us, we're going to do a 2-hour set. And it was pretty cool. But every so often, because it was on the west side of Salt Lake, homeless people would come in, and which is fine, okay. But getting them to leave was the problem.
Right.
So I remember one night we were getting ready to leave, and right by the door where you came in, there was an office, and I looked in there and I saw these legs, and I'm like, "What the hell? Is there a dead guy in there?" So we're walking in there, and it was this homeless guy that came in, and he's gone to sleep. So like, dude, sorry, man, we're leaving and we're locking up. You got to get out of here. You got to leave. And he would not flinch or anything. And he was alive. I did check that, Oh yeah, he's got a pulse. I'm a doctor, right? Got to make sure he's alive. So we got the idea. Hey, let's get the guitar player and his Marshall, bring it over here, set it right up next to the dude, and crank it. I mean, all the way. And he started playing, and I can't remember what he was playing. He was a real metal dude, and that guy was out of there so fast. It was a thing of beauty. It was fantastic. So yeah, music moves people.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's funny that you bring that up. I play with a Misfits tribute band like once a year. We usually do it like around Halloween. And there have been other years where we've been invited we played like a small festival here, and we played like an award show. And it's funny, the sound guy. Do you want to hear yourself? Yeah, that would be kind of good. I'd really like to hear what I sound like. Well, but you're playing the drums, and I still want to hear myself mixed in with the other stuff. And do you want to hear the singer? Yeah. Do you want to hear the bass? Yeah. Would you like to hear the guitar? Would be nice as well. Can I hear everyone? Oh, some people don't want to hear everyone. I said, well, I would like to hear the entire band, as if I'm, rehearsing in a small space where I hear everyone. I want to kind of, whether we're on a big stage or not, I want to hear the sound like I'm used to hearing it. And then the kicker is always, oh, well, you sing too? Yes, I do backing vocals. Do you want you want people to hear your mic? Yeah, if I have a mic, would be nice, so.
By the way,
But
the Facebook user, I don't know who that is, but it's somebody that obviously knows my shtick.
yes, well, I posted that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's Steve Hoker, maybe because he responded to it on Twitter. Unfortunately, unless you give the approval on, let me see if I can
Yeah,
find the
they won't know
caption
who you
here.
are.
Unless you give, here we go. Facebook. If you're on Facebook, use this link so that we can see who you are. Because if not, it blocks us from seeing. Yeah, so it is Steve
Steve.
Hoker.
By the way,
Yeah.
I love Steve, man. He's such a great guy. I loved when you had him on the show. Just listening to him, he was just. I love his self-deprecating humor,
Well,
and I want to
it
party
was
with
funny.
him. So I'm just saying that, Steve. Next time in New Jersey, want to party with you.
Well, you weren't too far from him, Matt.
I
Mount
know.
Olive isn't that far from Roxbury, and technically, I think it's part of the same municipality. Could be wrong, but anyway, so it's funny. I'm, the new thing with search engine optimization and getting the page ranks and everything is transcribing your interviews. So I've been trying a lot of different software these last few days to transcribe the videos. And so I did, I went all the way through and did the transcription of last week's episode. It's actually up on MarsAttacksRadio.com. If you look for this week's episode, there's a like plus button that you can check, and then the entire conversation opens up, all 13,000 words. And it's funny because towards the end, it was almost like a fireworks display. We were getting a lot of the oohs and ahs throughout, but then towards the end of the episode, when we're quick to wrap up, as the various stories start flying in, and Steve was very quick-witted with a lot of his responses and things as well. So it was a lot of fun to transcribe the stuff, and I was laughing wholeheartedly throughout, and especially that line. He's gonna die, but not from that. When I read that, I think there was an audible. I think my whole neighborhood heard me laugh. So there you go.
That's awesome. Yeah, my other one is when you get these guys that call up and say, "Well, my buddy just shot up a bunch of heroin," and it's like, what can I do? And I said, "Well, you can call 911." Well, I don't want to do that. And I said, "Well, does he owe you money? Because you might want to be, keep him alive if he owes you money." It's like, how good a friend is this guy?
Right.
Like, geez, save your friend's ass. Come on.
Right.
So, yeah. I've said a lot of things I probably shouldn't have said to people on the phones, but somehow I've survived a lot of visits to HR and running out of time. My dream of being put on paid administrative leave has just never happened. I just can't quite figure out how to pull that off, and I've said many things I shouldn't have said. So there you go.
They must really love you.
I know. What's up with that? Okay. All right. So Metallica, what was that? We went Metallica, the M. Oh, I'm going to throw a band out there.
Okay.
And this is another well-beloved band, one of those that probably sold more T-shirts than albums, and that's Motorhead.
Okay.
Now, the first time I saw Motorhead, it was before I even knew who the heck they were. It was after the Ace of Spades album, and they were
Okay.
warming up. I don't know if they were warming up for Sabbath or Ozzy. It was one of them. Okay, and yeah, you guys could probably figure that out. And of course, these guys come on, and first of all, the mic, hanging down, and Lemmy doing his thing, and just standing there, and it was just noise. It was just unadulterated noise.
Right.
And holy crap! Nobody's ever going to want to buy these guys' album. Nobody's ever going to be interested in these guys. And I was wrong. I was so wrong. Yeah, and I do like some of their songs. I've played a few of their songs, which are actually quite fun to play.
Okay.
But I can't say I'm going to sit down and just listen to Motorhead. It's I don't know, man. It's not speaking to my heart. And again, I have a lot of respect for what they did. Again, they did it. Lemmy did it his way. I mean, I guess people would argue, oh, that one album, he tried to be more commercial. And it's like, really? Motorhead commercial? I don't think so. Maybe from what they had been doing, which again, it goes back to something you've talked about before, and that's the bands that do the same album over and over. It's like, well, hey, let's make a different album. This is what we're feeling right now, so let's do this. And then the band does that, and everybody's like, oh, they changed, and I don't like what they're doing. I want them to sound like Motorhead. Well, has Motorhead never ever sounded like Motorhead? Boy, that was a tough thing to say.
I will say that they. And I've gotten into arguments with people over this, but during the 90s, they really did try dabbling in other things. And Mark actually interviewed Mickey D, and they talked about the Overnight Sensation album. And Overnight Sensation was heavily influenced by the music that was going on at that time, because they really had a lot of, like, they were down tuning a little, or they started to down tune, because later they down tuned on pretty much everything because Lemmy couldn't bring his voice up. But it was more in the times of what was going on in the 90s, and they were adding like acoustic guitars to things, and not in like a blues way, which they had done, but more of like almost adding acoustic guitars, because a lot of the grungy like bands were adding this element to some of their music. I do think that, a lot of the bands that were saying that they were influenced by Motorhead were inadvertently influencing them, where it was like, oh, okay, since they're name dropping us, okay, so it's fine for us to actually pull in some of what they're doing. There are certain Motorhead albums that I really, really like. The 1916 album I will always love. I will remember that album coming out, and Gabriel, who was with us last week, I remember boarding an airplane to come over to Spain for the summer, and music was a big thing for us always, and it was like, oh, what can we turn each other on to? And he got on the plane, and I remember MTV was playing videos of songs that we hadn't heard of theirs because they were off of this album, and he had it on cassette. So it was like, okay, well, halfway through the 6-hour flight over here, it's your turn to listen to it, and I was like, oh my God, this isn't, it isn't only Ace of Spades, there's a lot of other cool stuff that's going on here. To me, 1916 is my favorite album by them because of that emotional connection, but also I think it's the most probably diverse album, and it's probably the most polished song-wise from beginning to end, where you get to a lot of their other albums, it's like, okay, there's like 2 cool songs and the rest are just kind of filler. But that album, the 10 songs or 12 songs that are on there, I think are all pretty good. So but I get it, they're an acquired taste. I remember seeing them for the first time and seeing them do the song Overkill. I think it was before there was Headbangers Ball on MTV, and it was Dee Snider and Metal Mania, where he had that, where he did like one Saturday a month. It was just metal videos. It was hosted by Dee, and he had Lemmy on, and I didn't get it. Oh, the same thing you said. Oh, why the hell's this guy got the mic up in the air? Why does his voice sound like that? Why? I'm used to hearing, clean singing. I'm used to hearing Kiss. I'm used to hearing Motley Crue and things like that, and Quiet Riot, and what's this all about? And little did I know that a few years later, I would end up really loving it. So
yeah. Well, okay,
I got to see them live once, and I can say that it was close to the end of their career, so the show wasn't that great, but I can still say that I got to see them.
That's cool. Well, okay, so here's my assignment for anybody who's willing to jump in on this, and this goes for you too, Victor. Okay. I want 5 Motorhead songs that we should be playing on Yarg Metal. Okay, just make a list and send it to me. Don't do it right now.
Easy.
I want you to think about it. Yeah, cool. Well, bring it. I'm up for it because I want to be educated. And yeah, maybe I need to start with easy to chew food. Yeah, the last time I saw Motorhead was when they were touring. It was their very last tour, and Saxon was warming up for them, and they played here. And of course, they didn't make it through. They made it through 4 songs before Lemmy just couldn't do it anymore,
Oh wow.
which was tough. Um, but you know, after Saxon, those guys came on, and it was funny because during the 4th song, I said, you know what, it's not. I don't know where it's going from this, but I got to go home. I got to work in the morning, so I left. And then
Okay.
found out that that was their last song of the night, and I beat the crowd and the whole thing. And I'm not usually that guy. I'm kind of like committed when I go to something. I stay to the end. I rarely will leave early. So anyway, but they were trying. They were up there. They were up there jamming, and yeah, I have nothing but respect for them. But I still felt as I was standing in line looking at all the Motorhead shirts, I'm like, okay, how many albums do you own by these guys? Okay, are you here
Right.
just because it's Motorhead, or are you like a real fan? Are you gonna like know the set list and all that kind of stuff? And if you are, I have mad respect for you. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I actually got to see them with Saxon and with Judas Priest. So it was
Wow.
Motorhead, Saxon, or no, it was Saxon, Motorhead, and then
Yeah,
Priest.
Saxon warmed up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big eye catcher at that show, and I'll always say this, they were selling $85 tie-dye t-shirts of all 3 bands. And not $85 together. It was $85 a piece.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, who the hell is gonna buy one of these shirts? And it's a limited edition, no 2 are tie-dyed, together. And I'm thinking, not for nothing, but as a kid, when my mom would get bleach on a sweatshirt by mistake, we would purposely tie-dye the stuff so that the pattern kind of looked like it was done on purpose. Not that, the bleach kind of splashed on the shirt by mistake. So
Yeah, yeah. Bleach can wreck things faster than pretty much any other household chemical. So by the way, that's the most panicked call we get at the Poison Control Center. Everybody thinks when somebody drinks bleach, they're going to die, and of course, yes, they will, but not from that. I mean, even the
right.
911 operators, it's hilarious because they'll be like, yeah, it's because they're supposed to transfer the call to us, and then we tell them whether they need to go out there or not. And so they'll say, I've got a kid here that drank bleach and we already have a unit en route. Like, okay, are they all right? And of course they are. I mean, I had one mom that all she could say to me when I said, how is your child doing? All she could say was, he's going down, he's going down. And I'm like, I don't even know what the hell that means. I said, is he breathing? Is he throwing up? What's going on? He's going down, he's going down. And then all of a sudden I hear on the door, and it's the paramedics. And so I said,
Right.
will you put one of them on the phone? They come in. I said, so tell me what's going on. Can you see the kid? Oh yeah. What's he doing? Well, he's sitting there playing with toys. Does he seem to be okay? Yeah, he seems totally fine. I said, okay, great, thank you. But they said, well, something's wrong with mom. I said, yeah, she needs to go to the hospital.
Well,
So
let's be honest. What's used to clean most water and pools and things like that? Chlorine, uh,
bleach. Yeah.
bleach, chlorine. That's a big component. Clorox, bleach, all this stuff is a huge component of what you drink every day. So unless you're drinking like a 5-gallon barrel of bleach, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. I've only seen, I think now, as far as published cases, 3 people who've ever died from drinking bleach,
Okay.
and they all drank a gallon, and somehow were able to keep it down. And they actually died from the sodium content of it. They got
Okay.
hypernatremia, and so their brains swelled up and had to do a lot of swelled up to the point where it just couldn't function anymore, and they died. The
Right.
interesting thing was 2 of those cases were in Kentucky. Um, and the weird thing is, they weren't like related cases. It wasn't like 2 drinking buddies sitting around drinking bleach,
Yeah.
But of course, in Kentucky, they probably were related. So, yeah. So,
How
shout out
about
to
we,
Kentucky.
Bill and Bob? How about we take some shots of that bleach?
Yeah, yeah. Well, now we're getting off on a real tangent, but so enough Bleach. I like who's Wild SMF.
That's
That
Steve.
sounds like Steve.
He's trying to mess with us. He started out on Facebook,
Oh,
now he's
he's
over on
all over.
YouTube. I suspect he'll be on Twitch next. But
Okay.
yeah, I drink Windex. It keeps me from streaking.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
It also keeps you nice and shiny and new as well, just like
And
Madonna.
yeah, and I have to say, and totally 100% respect Steve's love for Twisted Sister. But that's another band that when they first came out, I was just and the first time I saw them, they were headlining a show with it was them, Y&T played before them, and then Dawkins warmed up the whole thing, and they were on the Tooth and Nail tour.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, I was actually one of the topics I was going to throw out there was witnessed what we call Spinal Tap moments. Well,
Right.
during that Dawkins show, there were two things that happened. One was George's guitar went totally out of the PA, and it was during Tooth and Nail, right at the lead. So, but I got to give him full credit. Maybe on stage he still had it in the monitors and sounded great. But that dude, man, he played every freaking note and he rocked it. And I was like, these guys are the real deal. And back then, Don could sing, and Don was just singing his ass off. But the second funniest thing that happened was during I think it's Into the Fire.
Mm-hmm.
That for whatever reason, Jeff Pilson felt the need to do keyboards on the second verse,
Right.
which to me is just like you don't need that. Nobody needs keyboards in this song, okay? But anyway, so what he did was, he had the keyboard over there, and he went over to play keyboards, and he didn't turn down the volume knob on his bass. So as soon as he took his hands off his bass and started playing the keyboards, the bass started feeding back. So then he was caught between, trying to play the keyboards, turn the bass down, and he couldn't quite figure out what to do with what. And it was just I felt for him.
He
I was
couldn't
like,
turn
yeah,
the volume down on the bass. Couldn't turn
yeah,
the volume knob off.
yeah. The sound guy, of course, isn't helping out because they're not paying attention. That's another one of my biggest beefs about concerts is sound guys that just have no idea what the hell is going on stage, what the music's supposed to sound like, and especially if it's their sound guy, that's just it's ridiculous. Yeah. There was this year's M3 was probably the worst sound. Well, I've only been to 3 of them. It's definitely the worst sound I've ever heard in that venue. It was awful. It was just unbelievably awful. And I actually, and I love it. I know sound men love it when people come up and try to give them tips. So of course I did, and I just said, "Hey, who was running this?" It was the third day, and it was LA Guns, Steve Riley's LA Guns that was playing, and they sounded great. I mean, I was just like, "Holy crap!" So I figured I had to tell somebody. So I went up to the soundboard. I said, "Dude, who's been running the sound for the last couple of days? Is it this guy?" And the guy said, "Nah." He says, "It depends on which band it is. Sometimes these guys have their own guys." And I said, "Well, whoever's running the sound right now, awesome. And whoever has been running the sound, not so great." So just throwing that out there. So pick it up, guys. Come on.
Unfortunately, you were probably saying that to the guy who was actually not so great and not the
Yeah. And
not
I try not to be
the
that guy. I don't want to be a dick, but it's like, geez, I mean,
I don't get it because I see bands here, bunch of guys that I talk about from time to time. Angelus Apatrid, a Spanish band. They're on Century Media. Their sound guy always says hello to me when he sees me. He's also their tour manager, or has been for the longest time. But they have an application that they connect to the soundboard. And what this does is it plays specific music, specific talking, and different things, and it automatically tunes the board, just the knobs to the places where it needs to be. And if it isn't a board that can be automatically adjusted via this program, at least whoever's running the board, if it's their manager, he knows where to get the frequencies where they need to be. So I don't understand, and especially nowadays, they have programs where you can just take a tablet up to the monitor and you don't even hear the sound. The tablet, from the sound that's being generated through that monitor to the tablet will then tell the person who's running the sound, okay, this is what's being heard. This is what's not being heard. This is this is the sweet spot. But I don't get it why, it's like, we don't care. So let's see. Steve is saying that Ozfest at Giant Stadium, Typo Negative went on first and sounded awesome. I didn't think they changed the mix until Black Sabbath came on. Okay.
So are you saying that Black Sabbath wasn't good? Their sound wasn't good?
What wasn't good about Sabbath? Was it Ozzy? Was it the entire band? What was going on?
Yeah. Every time I've seen Sabbath, their sound has been really good. Yeah, I know, like, even, Y&T, even though they're a club act over here, they actually have their own sound guy that travels with them, and because they want to sound good, and by golly, they do sound really good. I've heard them in clubs and bigger places,
Right.
and yeah, this guy, he nails it, and no, they were amazing, good. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Typo Negative. You ever seen them, Victor?
I have not.
I saw them warm up for Queensryche on the Promised Land tour.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife and I, we were in Portugal the day before the show, and it was in Las Vegas. So we flew all the way from Portugal through JFK
Okay.
with like an 8-hour layover or whatever. It took us like almost 24 hours to get home. Get in the car, drive 6 hours to Las Vegas, get to the show, and yeah, Typo Negative, and they were really good. I thought they sounded good. They played well, and yeah, totally enjoyed them. And then Queensryche, of course, was amazing. Still back in that time. So it's hard to hear, Brad. Okay, well, here, is that better? Oh, look, hey, it's the CEO is there. Woo! Welcome to the show.
I thought it said Dave Grohl for a second, and then I realized, it's Dave.
Yeah, he needs to put. Yeah, you need to change that where it says CEO Dave. Come on, Dave. But that's awesome. So yeah, back to Twisted Sister. So that night, and it was probably because Dokken, Y&T, and then by the time it got to Twisted Sister, I only knew a couple other songs. And I mean, and I have mad respect for them. I have mad respect for D, especially what he's doing now. But his shtick on stage just kind of, you can only be sworn at so much and enjoy it. And I think swearing for the sake of swearing just is, I don't know. And that's a whole nother topic on its own. I like when people use it for emphasis. You said something in last week's Mark Striegel podcast that I actually laughed my ass off because it was something about COVID, but it was just, and you dropped an F-bomb in there, but it was appropriate, and it wasn't, it just, anyway, it was for emphasis and it worked. So that's the thing. And if yeah, I just don't, if you can't say one sentence without dropping an F-bomb, I don't know. It's enough already. Okay. Just stop it. Please stop it. But I really like what D's doing now. I really liked his last album. I really liked the live album. And Steve, I don't know how you're feeling on this, but I like their version of the Twisted Sister songs better than the Twisted Sister versions. Is that blasphemy? No, help me out there, Steve.
I'm
really anxious to hear D's new album.
I listened to it a few times today, actually. I like it. To me, it's a continuation of the last album.
Yeah.
I
Except
know
for he wrote on this one.
Right.
Yeah, where he didn't write anything on the last one.
Right. But the last one, I think, the last one when it came out, and I posted this today on the site on my new releases, was one of my favorite albums that came out in 2018. And, as I do what I do with, the songs and or with the podcast and everything, I make my own 20, best of this year or that year or whatever. And when it came to picking songs off of that album, my 2018 playlist has the entire album. With this new album, it's a similar deal. I like all the songs so far, and I honestly feel that he was so off track for so long, because the last album that I really loved of his was back in the 90s, was when he had another band called Widowmaker, which had Al Pitrelli, who ended up in Megadeth and Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and the drummer was Joe Franco, who was the second drummer in Twisted Sister, and it was much heavier. That second album was really heavy, and that's what I wanted him to go back to that. And then we got D Hits Broadway and D. Snider doing Broadway tunes. Then we got an album after that where it was D. Snider trying to do Avril Lavigne songs. It was like pop punk stuff, and it was I don't want this. I want angst-full D. I want what he sounded like to me on those first few Twisted Sister albums, and what he sounded like on this Widowmaker album. And thankfully, these last two solo albums have delivered on that. It's funny when For the Love of Metal came out, I was reading all these people saying, "Where's the melody? It's just people screaming." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Are you actually listening to the music? Because there's a song like The Hardest Way, which has Howard Jones doing the vocals with D on it, and he's got such a monstrous voice, that song itself, the chorus part, if I listen to it, I have it in my head for like the next 5 days because it's just such a huge anthemic song. And all of these songs that he's done on both of these albums have that anthemic quality. So I mean, I don't mind the screaming.
Yeah, my only problem with For the Love of Metal, and I actually sent this to D. I said it should be For the Love of Yarg Metal. Come on, D. But yeah, I play a lot of songs off that. The live album that he put out after that, I bought that with the DVD, and I gotta say, the show, even though it's pieced together with a bunch of different performances, I kind of wish it was one one performance, but that's okay. But I mean, swearing aside, the songs were all fantastic, and his band was fantastic. I was like, these guys, he did the right thing. He came back with a really good band, and he brought it. So well done, D. And sorry, Steve.
I'm sorry, Steve. I'm reading that, and all I keep hearing in my head is if you're a fan of The Office, there's a scene where actually one of the characters say that, "How dare you, sir?" And it's actually a clip that we play frequently at home. So so I keep hearing that. But anyway, it's
I guess I need to find that soundbite. Okay.
Well,
and and again, I have respect for anybody who's a total fan of a band. I think that's what music's all about, man. It's the same thing with pizza. Okay, if I ask you what's your favorite thing to have on a pizza, and you're like, I don't care, then there's something wrong with you. Okay, if you don't care what's on your pizza, there's something wrong with you. If it's like, well, what kind of music do you like? I don't know, whatever's on the radio is good with me. It's like, there's something wrong with you. Okay, you don't fit into my world. I mean, even if you like something I don't like, if you're passionate about it and like it, then I have full respect for that.
Let's not get on the pizza topic because pizza's horrible here. So let me put it to you this way. When Pizza Hut and Domino's is by far the best stuff you can get, there's something wrong. So
yeah, I'm with you there, man. I'm 100% with you there.
All right. What other kind of list or thing do we have to send you? What else do you have written down there?
Well, let's see. What was the other band? Oh, I was going to mention, you mentioned Social Distortion earlier. I was actually in a Social Distortion tribute band for a hot minute.
Oh, you were?
We actually played one gig. Yeah, it was called 99 to Life. And of course, we didn't play that song because why would you play that song? But I got to say, again, because the guitar player who sang, he was so passionate about it, it made it fun. That's what made it fun for me. And I like a few other songs, but again, it's a band that I'm not going to be, I'm just not going to be buying the album and sitting down and go, I want to listen to the Social Distortion for the next hour. It's just not my thing. I have a lot of respect for them. for what they've done. I mean, and so there you go. What's your take on Social D?
One of my all-time favorite albums is 1996's White Light, White Heat, White Trash by Social Distortion. I've listened to that album a lot. It had a lot of, just because the social commentary and just a lot of the lyrics are very well done.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of elements of music that I had been into for a long time, but it kind of mixed, a lot of different messages and a lot of different things that were really pertinent in my life at that time. So I have a sort of a sweet spot for that album. I will say that no album of theirs before or after kind of does it quite the same for me as that specific album. So
Yeah, if I wasn't such an old man and a rock tard, I would be able to remember the names of the songs we played and tell you that my favorite ones that we played, but I can't remember the names of them. But there were some songs I really did enjoy playing by them. So good for them. But they've never made it huge. I mean, they'll
no,
certainly play big
they
shows.
had their moment like on MTV in like from 94 to about 96, but then also that's around the time that MTV started getting, reality TV heavy. So a lot of the bands that they were, kind of shining a spotlight on, unfortunately, much like a lot of the bands that, a lot of people will say, oh, well, grunge killed, the hair metal or glam metal or whatever. Well, actually, a lot of music in general was killed at the same time because, the biggest proponent all of a sudden decided that seeing degenerates on TV, in an apartment together was, brought in more ratings and more commercial money than, playing the same videos by the same 10 degenerate rock stars every day. So it was much like what we talked about last week when it came to Tommy Lee and a lot of Motley Crue's, antics.
Yeah.
What sold a lot of these bands was the mystique and the legend and all that. And why why wait for that mystique or that legend to play out when you can have it 24 hours a day? We could watch, The Real World, or we could watch, Jersey Shore, or whatever else they were, trying to peddle. So, and it's funny because that's kind of evolved into what we see on social media with a lot of stuff. A lot of people will say, well, there isn't that mystique anymore. Right. But that started in the 90s when people when people went on this reality TV craze. If people weren't tuning in for a lot of this crap, then it wouldn't be popular. So
I hear you. Okay, so let's kill a few more sacred cows here.
okay.
Um, I'll go way back when I was a freshman in high school, and these guys that were I ran cross country. I know, hard to believe, but it's true. But a couple of guys on there were huge music fans, and they would loan me albums of things I hadn't heard, and that's how I actually got the first Kiss album.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian Stevenson. He had the first Kiss album. He was actually like the best runner on the team too. And he also gave me, at the same time he gave me the first Kiss album, he gave me Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic.
Okay.
And I listened to both of those, and I think I brought that Aerosmith album back the next day and said, "Yeah, you can have this one back, but the Kiss one I'm going to keep for a while." And I don't know what it was about Aerosmith that just didn't click for me, because I do like a lot of songs on that album now.
Right.
But at the time, I listened to it and I was just like, I don't know. It just isn't doing it for me. I've never seen them live, so I can't comment on that. Have you ever seen them?
I have not seen them live, but I'm kind of in the same boat. I like Aerosmith, but I'm not a huge fan. I like songs here and there by them, and usually songs that haven't been on the radio like 80 million times. So,
Yeah.
there's definitely songs like, for example, I think a month or two ago, there was the 30th anniversary of the album Pump coming out. And my favorite songs off of Pump are the first two, Young Lust and Fine.
Yeah.
I love those songs, and those were never radio hits. but I start to hear the first few notes out of the radio hits off of that just got played to death, and it's like, no, I can't do it. You know, they're a band that, to me, I get that every band has its fans or whatnot, and they've sold a lot more albums than Kiss has, but I don't know why, because I would take Kiss in any format before I would take Aerosmith personally.
And here's another thing about Aerosmith, and this again, not a knock against anybody, but I guess it is. Joe Perry. Okay, I wish we had like Mark here, or the guitar player that could comment on this. I don't understand what it is. I mean, as I listen to his solos and stuff, it's like his leads. None of them are memorable. None of them are like, wow, that was really, that was really cool. I've seen him. I've seen live video of him playing. And I'm still just like, okay, looking cool is one thing. He's got that, 10 out of 10. But I have yet to hear him play anything that I was like, now that was awesome.
Right.
So what am I missing here? I don't know. I don't know if anybody can help me out. If you can point me to an Aerosmith song that wasn't Brad.
Jose's bringing up Armageddon and the Don't Want to Miss a Thing song, which I absolutely detested. That was... Oh my God. That was
Joe Perry's greatest solo.
My ex-wife was, oh, I love Aerosmith. Oh yeah, well, what song do you like? I like the song off the Armageddon soundtrack. I'm like, that piece of dog shit? That's like the one that you... And I was like, all right, makes sense.
Is that when you knew the marriage was over?
No, unfortunately, no. I should have. Okay. That should have been an early warning sign before.
Yeah, there you go. Red flag. Red flag.
Yeah, again, they've got songs that I like, but I mean, I hear you. I think it's kind of more of that combustible element. Well, are we going to see, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry come to blows? Are we going to see, this fall apart? One of those things, as opposed to, oh my God, listen to this solo, where if you think about, the comparisons that they made to Guns N' Roses, for example, you listen to Slash, and there are solos that Slash has played where they're memorable, where you can whistle to them, where they get stuck in your head, and you're like, all right, I understand why this song is popular. But it's almost as if, it's almost like, and I don't get this. I know that Leo from Alaska took umbrage with me saying that I wasn't a Hendrix fan. I like Hendrix, but I won't, that isn't something that, I have my Hendrix playlist, and I appreciate what he did as a pioneer, but if I want to hear a guitarist, he isn't like within my top 50 guitarists that I'll go to. That's just my opinion. Doesn't mean that should turn anyone else off. And I remember his comment was, well, I can't trust anyone's opinion who doesn't like Jimi Hendrix. And I was like,
no.
Yeah, all right, whatever. All of a sudden, we're becoming music Nazis where, well, if you don't like what I like, then you don't like music. It's like, really?
No, we're going back to pizza here. Okay. If you tell me you like anchovies on a pizza, I respect that. Okay. Because you like it. Okay. Mm-hmm. But again, if you're like, I don't care, then yeah, whatever. And guy, I don't know how Jimmy didn't make my list, but again, it's blasphemy that I feel exactly the same way you feel about Jimmy. I mean, I like some of this stuff, and I have mad respect for what he did. But I don't listen to his playing and go, oh man, guy, how did he, that solo is just like, yeah, sorry. It escapes me. Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad that we found common ground with Steve on the Aerosmith stuff. So that makes me happy.
But during that time period, I can think of players like Jimmy Page, who immediately draws me to his playing. Tony Iommi, later on Ace Frehley, later on, Angus Young. There are other players, different styles, that just have always spoken to me more than Hendrix did. And again, I appreciate what he did in influencing all of these players, but I think other players kind of took what he did and took it to another place. It's kind of, I always see a lot of people always say, well, Black Sabbath were the, godfathers of heavy metal. And I've always said to a lot of people, but they hate that term. So if they hate that and they consider themselves a hard rock band, are they really the first guys to do heavy metal? But then you hear, interviews from Judas Priest to proudly, kind of fly that flag. And I'll say, to me, Priest is the first band to actually like remove that heavy blues influence that Sabbath had, kind of put gasoline on the whole thing and kind of like supercharge the riffs. And to me, honestly, sure, there were a lot of different elements that led to metal, but I think Judas Priest is probably the first band that put out a pure metal album, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a valid opinion. I mean, back then in the 70s, it was, I was I was looking for anything that was really hard rock.
Right.
And there just wasn't really that many bands back then that were really doing it. And of course, Judas Priest. Yeah, I don't want to go down that road. That's a whole nother topic. But yeah, you're right. And if CEO Dave is still listening, he's gonna probably disagree with you that they're the fathers of modern or any metal for that matter. But he'll also throw down that they're the best band that's ever been on this planet. I do have to say this about Tony Iommi while we're talking about guitar players, is that his solos really are awesome. I mean, there's so many of those songs I can sing the solos to, even if he's like playing 3 different solos at the same time. It's like, yeah, if we're going to play that live, you got to be close to that. You can't just, you can't just go off and play whatever. That's why I have a hard time playing Black Sabbath songs with people that aren't real fans. In the band, the guitar player, it's just like, what you're doing to this song is it's like peeing on the grave, man. You can't do that. You got to play the song, and that includes the lead, or at least some facsimile of it.
Well, that's why I love, Bill Ward for what he did back then. To me, Bill was a huge influence on my playing, just because he took a lot of like the ideology, and I mentioned this last week, that a lot of guitar players had, where, with the leads and the overdubs and stuff, Bill was doing all types of percussive stuff in the background, and he was adding, like the intro to Children of the Grave. There's the part with the toms that is kind of like a lead drum part almost, in the beginning of that song, which Lars Ulrich kind of copies on the last album with the song Until We're Dead. It's kind of the same similar type of like rhythmic pattern at the beginning of that song. So I mean, with everything that I just said about Sabbath, to me, there's no doubt that if they're not, they're easily top 5 most influential rock band of all time. I mean, Beatles, Stones, Zeppelin, and Sabbath, and maybe you could argue a Pink Floyd, and maybe you could argue a Deep Purple, but without those cornerstone bands, you wouldn't get that next. You wouldn't get Kiss, you wouldn't get Judas Priest, you wouldn't get Iron Maiden, you wouldn't get everything. I think the question was asked last week: is Tommy Lee one of the greatest drummers of all time? I think Tommy Lee was one of the greatest drummers of that era. He was definitely influential and helped, push things along. And I think all these bands that I'm mentioning, there's a block of time where there were a series of albums that were a series of pictures where, certain bands built the foundation. Then other bands came along and built the first floor. Other bands built the, next few floors. I'd like to think that we haven't gotten to the penthouse yet, and I want to believe that there are other bands that are continuing to build, levels on this building, and sure, they're taking the work that came before them, like any architect would, look at what the Romans did and look at what the Greeks did and look at what great architects through time have done and take some of that, improve it, and continue to build. And to me, for that point in time, those players were hugely important. They're still important today because, we talk about how many things, that we've talked about over the times that you've been on the show. You've asked me about Fu Manchu, which is a straight up stoner band. No
Yep.
Sabbath, no Early
No,
Kiss,
no Fu
no Fu
Manchu.
Manchu, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, you're right. And I do like them, by the way. So thanks
yeah,
for your suggestions on that, but this is a perfect time to kind of, pimp out what you're doing. If anybody's listening to this and you're not a member of Victor's Patreon, and you're somebody who's like wondering, hey, where can I find new music that's really good? Well, you join Victor's Patreon, you get those videos every day, and you don't have to watch them all. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there, and there's a lot of clams too, in my opinion.
sure.
But that's the whole purpose of it. It's like throwing it out there. It's like, hey, if you hear something you like, let's talk about it.
Absolutely.
Let's hear about it. Because
Yeah.
there are a lot of people, in spite of the whole rock is dead thing, rock is not dead. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to put out, I don't know how many videos a day. Sometimes it feels like 10 or 20, but I know it's supposed to be two. But I mean, these are all, I mean, so many of these are bands I'd never even heard of before. And
Right.
a lot of them pretty much are rock. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's rock. I mean, guitars everywhere. And there's a lot of people playing a lot of music. I just think the problem is here in the United States, people got blinders on when it
Right.
comes to music. I
Yeah.
mean,
And I also think, not as you're saying, not everything that I post I like, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other people that may like that same stuff. That's the whole
right.
purpose, because I love turning people on to new music. Hearing Jeremy Weltman, for example, say, "Hey, I bought 10 albums thanks to bands that I've discovered on your Patreon." Or people telling me, "Hey, I've added so and so to my playlist because I heard them there." And yeah, not everything. I don't like everything. Other people don't like, everything that I like. There are certain bands that I post that I love. And I know that other people are gonna be like, I'm not into the vocals, or I'm not into this, or I'm not into that. But that's cool. That's fine. I posted the new Jerry Cantrell song that was released yesterday. And I like it, but for the most part, people were saying it was kind of boring or just didn't do it for them. And that's cool. That's if we agreed on everything again, everything would just be terrestrial radio.
Yeah. Like Grandpa used to say, if we all like the same thing, everybody would be after your grandma.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know if I've said that before on here, but it's worth repeating. So anybody listening, you should seriously think about ponying up $2 a month to join Victor's Patreon. And if you're really so cheap that $2 a month is too much for you, well, listen to Yarg Metal. It's free, okay? And if you have a problem with free, then what the hell's wrong with you?
Right.
And
Well,
don't just listen to one song. I get that too. Somebody will tune in and they'll like, "Ooh, I didn't like that song, so I shut it off." It's like, well, you dumbass, you got to listen to like an hour. I mean, if you don't like this
right,
song, you might like the next one. I purposefully try to kind of mix it up to where you don't get a whole block of
right,
so it's a mix of things. And where it's like, well, if you like that song, maybe you'll like the next one. If you don't like this one,
sure,
maybe you'll like the next one. But listen for a whole freaking hour before you tell me you don't like it. Okay. At least
right.
give me that much. And if you don't like it, hey, I'm cool with that. I agree to disagree. And you like something on your pizza that I don't like, and I'm cool with that because you like something.
There you go. And I will say that as of today, we do have a new patron.
Ooh.
And I was actually able to include him in the ending video. It is Johan up in Sweden, who has been on Mark's Patreon for a long time. He's
Let's do
decided,
an amigo mio.
yeah, he's decided to jump on board, which is great because I've talked to Johan, from time to time through Facebook, and it was funny. We both missed out on. It was either the Holy Diver, yeah, it was the Holy Diver discussion, and he sent me a message saying, weren't we supposed to talk now? I said, no, I screwed the time up. We were supposed to talk 2 hours ago. So he called me up, that Saturday night, and we ended up talking for like 2 hours on the phone about music. And it was funny. My wife was like, who's calling you at this time? I said, don't worry. It's just Johan in Sweden. It's no females involved. Don't worry.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to get a female on Patreon though. I mean, come on, girls. There's got to be. I know there's a lot. I see a lot of girls at these shows, and
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not cool to sit around and listen to a bunch of old fat bald guys talk about rock for. But hey, check this out, man. Yeah. We're well maybe a little overweight, but yeah. By the way, the shirt, when you guys get to the $10 level and you get the shirt, order a size big because it does shrink a little bit. Nice shirt though. Really, really, really nice. So
Okay. What did you get? An extra large?
I got a 2X just because it's not that I'm really fat or anything, but it's just, you know, I'm old.
Some of these shirts,
Okay?
though, well, this is my biggest problem between the States and here is that in order for me to get the equivalent of an XL here, I need to get at least a double, if not a triple extra large. And who knows, maybe just the way that those shirts are cut, maybe they're just a little tight. So
No, this is perfect. So 2X,
okay.
this is fitting me perfect. It's very comfortable. It's a very nice shirt. Even if you don't want to join the Patreon, you want a really cool looking shirt to wear to, the next concert, wherever that's gonna, whoever that is. Hey, pony up the dough. You can get it on let's see, MarsAttacksRadio.com.
That is correct. In the merch section, they are $22.95 if I'm not mistaken, plus shipping. And the company that I order from, which is called Zazzle, they have like now they're running all types of specials. So that shirt, I think, although it was 22, it ended up being like 14 without the shipping. So they're
So what you're saying is I probably shouldn't have cut my $10 back to $2 after I got the shirt.
well, it is what it is. In the
No,
long
I
run,
would
it'll
never
work
do
out.
that. I would never do that. I'll tell you right now, the money I'm spending with you and Mark supporting you guys is money well spent. But I really love what you're doing because it's more of a tight community. And if it blows up, it blows up. I'm willing to live with that. But everybody here is cool. Everybody I see in the chat. I kind of miss Jeremy though. I hope he's okay. I hope he's doing something fun, and that's why he's not here. Maybe sleeping. I don't know. But everybody that I've known that's ever been in here in the chat room, and that has been a A+ cool person. So
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
who else can say that? Who else on the internet can say 100% of the people here are cool people?
Right. Yeah, we've been lucky that we've really had no trolls or anything, that everyone is here kind of for the same reason, just to hang out, talk about music. And even if we don't agree on things, I think for everyone is respectful with one another. So
Totally, man. It's all about loving music. So
absolutely. Do you have anything else there on your list?
Oh hell yeah! But I mean, we've kind of got an hour and a half almost here.
Yeah, we've got like 5 minutes to go. So
okay, I'm going to do a
one more.
lightning round. Okay.
Okay.
And you already mentioned this band, and I'm not going to argue that they're not influential. But for some reason, it doesn't flip my switches the same way, and that's Pink Floyd.
Okay.
I certainly do love Dark Side of the Moon only because CEO Dave had that album back in the day, and kind of fell in love with listening to that. I learned back then I was a piano player, and I learned a lot of the piano off that album, so that kind of helped. But I think that's just an incredible piece of art, that album. But after that, the song with the albums, and here's what really killed me, okay? And CEO Dave, if you're still there, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the night we stayed up all night long with these guys. These guys are party animals. We went water skiing, and we got in the boat. and we're like, yeah, and we're ready to go water skiing. And all they had was Pink Floyd tapes, cassettes, and they're popping them in. And within about 30 minutes of, we're all kind of just sitting there staring at each other. Like, I mean, they took the party right out of the boat. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that the music was bad or anything, but it was not, yeah, it wasn't getting the job done. And until one of the guys got sick and vomited over the side of the boat, and he'd been eating pork and beans. And so there's these beans floating on the water, and then fish would come up and eat the beans. That kind of got things going again. It's like, yeah, now the party's going again.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
I haven't even told a poop story, so there you go.
Folks, if you know Brad, you know that Brad brings the stories. For me, all right, if we want to talk about Floyd, I'm good with Animals, with Wish You Were Here, with Dark Side of the Moon, and with The Wall. Nothing else really interests me besides those albums.
Okay, fair enough. I actually like some of the newer songs, off just a couple of songs here and there. I just, again, it's not that I despise the band or anything. It's just, it doesn't like,
you got to be in the mood.
They don't get me excited. Okay.
You wanted to go water skiing. You wanted to go water skiing, and you wanted to hear Van Halen. You didn't want to hear
yes, I wanted to hear Van Halen, but guess what? They didn't exist then. Oh no, they did. Okay. But these guys, nobody brought that. Oh, we got his Pink Floyd. Oh, this album's so cool. Like, yeah, it's cool if you're like stoned, but we're not. Okay. Another band that was introduced to me in the 70s about the same time as the Aerosmith and all that was Queen. And I remember now, it was the very first time I saw Kiss. Okay. We couldn't get tickets in LA because they sold out instantly. So I bought tickets in San Diego. And thanks to CEO Dave and his buddies, because I was 15. Of course, I can't drive at 15. Right. They took me. Of course, I bought the tickets. So what are they going to do? So we had two cars. And the one guy in our car was like, oh, I just bought this Queen thing. It's the best thing ever. And I think it was Queen 2, something like that. Right. And he put that on, and I was just like, okay, this is really not rocking me. I'm sorry. I appreciate it now more than I did then because I've played a lot of Queen songs. But still, it's just, and I've tried. I've watched so many concerts of theirs, because they've shot so many of them. And Freddie Mercury, right. I mean, yeah, he's a great singer and everything, but I can't watch that guy. I just can't. I can't watch him, and it's just like, but I do have to say this, man. I have so much mad respect for John Deacon and his bass playing. Holy crap, that guy, unbelievable. I mean, bass parts and melodic and just nailing it. The whole band is really, really good. And, but again, their music, I can't sit there and listen to a whole lot of Queen. Sorry, can't do it.
Okay. Queen, at certain points in my life, was one of the bands that I listened to probably the most. I was a huge Queen fan for a very long time. I got really burnt out on them, and really, I would say Queen 2 is kind of a boring album. But after,
thank you.
Yeah, for me, News for the World, The Game, Jazz, The Works, Miracle, A Kind of Magic, especially, and Innuendo. I love those albums. I really love A Kind of Magic and Innuendo, which were, they're, to me, their last album and their second to last album. After that, everything they've done after Freddie has died, to me, has been absolute shit, including the movie that they did. So again, revisionist history, and just, I get it. They're trying to sell their music to younger kids, and it's worked because they were the second biggest rock act last year in the world, from a money standpoint. But I just don't like what they've done. I don't like what Brian May and Roger Taylor have done with that name. So I don't know. Anyway, lightning round. So what's next?
That was it. I think
that was it. Oh, okay.
I know there's probably some other bands that I just, but that's the quick and dirty list of bands that were really big, and I just had a hard time. I still have a hard time just like being like, ooh.
Well,
I mean, would I spend big money to go see these guys?
If we're going that way, if we're going that route, I mean, I could throw out the Eagles, who I've never really been a fan of.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. So Shelley, because we had to deal with the music around the pool being well, whatchamacallit, that stupid service that will play music and then commercials every so often. But she has her playlist on there, classic rock. In fact, well,
Spotify,
yeah, no, not Spotify. It's the free one. It's
Pandora.
Pandora. Thank you. God, my brain's so tired. Yeah, Pandora. So she throws on Pandora, and it starts with Eddie Money because she's a huge Eddie Money fan, which I'm a huge fan of Eddie as well, because he rocks. Okay, but it starts off with that, but I guarantee you the second song that's going to come on is going to be the Eagles. And 9 times out of 10, I feel like it's Hotel California. And I've heard that song more times than I can count. Okay. It's just enough already. Enough. And I agree. It's a great piece of rock history and all that kind of stuff, but I've had it. Okay. But the last couple of days out at the pool, the Eagles songs they've been culling from have been kind of more minor hits, I guess.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, the song's all right, but the lyrics are stupid. It's like really, really stupid. I can't even remember what that last one. Oh, guy, yeah, just I'm like, what is he really saying here?
Okay. So I've got 2 stories for you here. You brought up Eddie Money.
Okay.
Jose's
All right.
sister is in an Eddie Money video.
Get out.
Yeah.
Shaken?
Nope. I want to go back. The song that Ace Frehley just covered on one of his last few albums, I Want to Go Back, the video was shot in the old high school in Dover, New Jersey. And the high school juniors and seniors, when that video was shot, were taken down to be extras for that video. So she can be seen for like half a second dancing in that video.
Nice.
The Eagles, the first time I was ever in France.
That's a great way to start off a story of any story.
We crossed the border and we're like, let's see what music, is popular here. We flipped the station on. Oh wow, Eagles Hotel California. Okay. Finishes and some other, they're whatever, the DJ comes on, he's speaking French. We're like, all right, well, let's just keep it on music. Let's skip over to another station. Oh, wow. Next station. Hey, they're playing Hotel California.
You can check out, but you can never leave.
There you go. I kid you not. We spent like 3 hours just skipping stations, and the only thing that was coming up was Hotel California.
Yeah, it's too much. I think the only Eagles song I've ever played with a band was Desperado. And if I remember right, there wasn't any really bass in it. So I don't know what I did. I'd kind of walk around the stage pretending like I don't know. I was probably mocking the song.
Yeah, I think that song is only Don Henley and keyboards, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, another band that's huge that I never cared for, Fleetwood Mac.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm with you there. Which there again, I don't know. Did I tell the story about where my band warmed up for Mick Fleetwood and Stevie Nicks? It was kind of when they were on the outs with with what's his name, the guitar player,
Lindsey
and
Buckingham.
yeah. So it was an outdoor festival at the fairgrounds in Salt Lake. It was the Utah State Fairgrounds, and it was a big thing, and it was a big thing for our band to play this, and we were doing all original songs, which was way cool because it was a concert, and we went over really well, which was cool. So we finished playing and we go backstage, and they got like a little trailer for us, and Mick Fleetwood shows up, and he comes in, and he couldn't have been nicer. The coolest guy, wanted to meet us, wanted to say hi to us and kind of sit down and talk for a while. But then all of a sudden this guy comes in, he's like, okay, everybody has to leave. Like, what do you mean we have to leave? He said, yep, you have to leave. Why? Well, because she's here. And everybody has to leave. Nobody else can be backstage. And I was like, that's just the most like ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Right.
It's like, what are we going to do? Okay. Yeah. So there you go. That's my Fleetwood Mac story. But yeah, the songs are just,
yeah, I just unfortunately there's again, similar to your water skiing story, where it just didn't, never did it for me, and they were always on the radio. But did Brad, did you freeze on me? Am I the only one not seeing Brad here? Am I the one that's frozen? Oh, looks like Brad checked out. Let's see if we can get him back on to kind of wrap things up here. But in the meantime, do want to thank everyone that has joined us in the chat. We got to see CEO Dave for the first time. We got to see Jose. We got to see Steve Hoker in various forms. And we got to see Rob Rowe as well. I want to thank you guys for, again, I always say this, for spending your Fridays here. There's obviously a lot of choices and things that that you could be doing instead, but you decide to spend your time with me. And also want to thank people that are going to be listening to the replay of this, whether you check it out on YouTube or any other video platform, or whether you hear the audio and you're subscribed to it. I want to thank you guys for, again, subscribing and listening. And nope, looks like we got Brad back. There we go.
Fleetwood Mac killed the live stream.
No, Stevie Nicks. See,
Stevie Nicks killed the live stream.
That? See, she came in and she axed it just like you guys, in the backstage.
Yeah, she kicked us out. It's she kicked me to backstage. Yeah, stop dragging my live stream around.
There you go.
So
yeah,
we've gone way over.
Well, I can list a ton of bands that I wasn't into before, but after moving overseas and not hearing them like 80 times a day, actually made me appreciate them more and made me dig deeper into their catalog. So, there's
maybe we can talk about that next time. I think that was my other suggestion, is bands that we really didn't, maybe late to the party or right. something, flip the switch for us. So I got a whole list of that.
All right, cool. I've got my work to do as well. I've got things that I gotta get ready for Brad here.
5 Motorhead songs.
Mastodon.
Yep, 5 Mastodon, all M songs.
Okay.
No Metallica though. If they gave us a shout out, I'd start playing them. Let's see. I don't need Social Distortion songs. I've got like a whole lot of their songs that I learned at one time. No, that's good. Let's start with that. Oh, wait, there is one other M, but we needed Jeremy for this Magnum. I wanted him to throw me 5 Magnum songs that he thinks we should play.
See, we need to. This is one thing that I wish I could get Richie from Focus on Metal on, who's originally from Ireland, and he's fabulous, with his storytelling, and he's interviewed a ton of acts over the years. Would be cool to have both Jeremy and Richie on at the same time to give us, the European, British, and so on and so forth angle on things, with how they came across bands. And the last time I had Richie on was for St. Patrick's Day, and we did 5 Irish bands that you should know that aren't Thin Lizzy.
Cool.
So I love doing all that stuff, like best Magnum songs, best bands that were big over there that never made it in the States. So
yep.
So there you go. That. Awesome.
Cool. Well, Victor, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I was going
to thank you for coming on. It is always a pleasure. People always ask, when's Brad coming back? So Brad will be back again sometime in the future. This is like the end of a movie. Brad will return in
the son of Brad.
Yeah, the son of Yarg.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So
we should get my kid on here, man. It's he's got an interesting perspective on music. So, but anyway, that'll be another story. Cool, man. Well,
awesome.
Everybody's the best, man. Keep rocking.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad. Thanks everyone for checking the show out, and we will see you next time right here on the Signals from Mars live stream brought to you by the Mars Attacks Podcast and VMR IT. Until next time, see ya.
And Stevie Nicks.
Stevie Nicks. There you go.